Hello and welcome to the next episode of my Learn With Me Opsix series. So far we've covered, I would say, most of the basic features of the synthesizer. We've explored the panel, we've explored the different features of the operators, we've done FM synthesis using the built-in algorithms with 4 and 6 operators, and we've made a user algorithm using 6 operators. So what I'd like to do today is to start exploring some of the other features that this synthesizer has. Now, the first feature I'm going to explore is common to a lot of FM synthesizers, but I'm going to try and take it as far as I can. What is that? It's additive synthesis. So first, what is additive synthesis? Additive synthesis is a synthesis method where you combine a series of sine waves, harmonics of a fundamental frequency, with various shaping, envelopes, LFOs, and so forth, to try and get a timbre. The thing is that typical additive synthesis might use, say, 20 harmonics. In practice, we only have access to 6 operators here, so that means 6 oscillators. Now, it's possible for me to have each one representing more than one frequency, which is a potential approach that we could take, but rather than do that, I think that complicates things. I'm just going to have each one be its own individual harmonic. So firstly, I think it's easiest to just use the user algorithms here. So in particular, no modulation at all, everything outputting to the mixer. Now, looking at each of these, let's set them to the fundamental, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and 6 harmonics. So what I'm also going to do is, since I only have 6 harmonics, I'm going to try and add a bit more harmonic complexity. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using triangle waves instead of sine waves. This is not, in the strictest sense, what you would expect from a additive synthesizer, but I'm going to go for it anyway. So let's listen to them, just bringing them in. So one of the things you'll note is the sound is very much like an organ. That's firstly because all of the operators have the same shape of envelope, and secondly because, in a sense, an organ is an additive synth. The drawbars or the stops are increasing or decreasing the volume of these various frequency bands. So what we need to do to get away from that sound is to add more interesting variation in the amplitude here. So what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to turn all of these up. I probably won't turn them up fully because it might be too loud for the output. Okay, so that sounds fine for now to me. And what I'm then going to do is set the envelopes for each of these, and we'll readjust the levels afterwards. So what I'm thinking is the highest frequency is going to have something which has no attack at all. And then as we go to the lower frequencies, there'll be a little bit more of attack on each one. So let's set that up. So this first one can have 0 attack. This one can have, let's see, quarter of a second attack, half a second attack, 1 second attack, 2 second attack, and 3 second attack. So let's listen to that for now. So we can definitely hear that sharp, plucky attack that comes in, and then more of the body of the sound comes in after that. So how are we going to shape that body of the sound? Well, I think we're going to have a relatively long decay on each of these. So let's say the highest frequency is going to have the shortest decay, but the decays are all going to be quite long. So 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5.5 seconds. In case you're not aware, you can always hold shift when turning these to make them operate at a finer granularity, but the exact values are not really that important here. I'm feeling like even in the middle register it sounds a bit too high pitched. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to set everything down an octave. So one thing that I'd like to do, which isn't necessarily the case ordinarily in these type of synthesizers, is to detune everything a little bit. This tends to give a little bit more motion. So what I'm going to do is detune everything down. I'll leave the first oscillator in its regular spot. So 1/2 cent, 1 cent, 1.5 cents, 2 cents, 2.5 cents, 3, no, this was my 0, so. Okay, so let's try. So you can hear a little motion going there. A thing which will be interesting as well is, by default, the operators are selected to be in phase with one another. I can have them free running instead of being in phase. So. Okay, sounds okay. So now let's think about the release. I think it'll be interesting if basically everything has the same amount of release. I'm interested in the thought that maybe the high frequency can have a little longer release than the rest. So let's go to the high frequency. Let's give that a 3-second release. Then a 2.5 second, 2 second, 1.5 second, 1 second, and 1/2 second. So let's see how that sounds. So you can hear that as it fades out, instead of that bassy part sustaining, the high pitch part sustains. And notice when I play quickly, I don't give the attack a time to occur on these lower frequencies. So I end up with quite a different timbre whether I hold or I don't. Next, let's think about the sustain levels here. I'm thinking that we probably want the least sustain on the highest frequencies, but we don't want it to be too low because we'd like some of it to be there for this release phase. So let's say 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, and 65. So the sustain level will be the highest for the lowest pitched operator. Okay, I think that's already sounding reasonable. So let me try and manually adjust the shape. So as I get the timbre I like during the sustain phase, I'm going to pull everything down. I'm going to hold down a chord. Okay, I think that's working quite well. Now I'd like to add a bit more movement, and I think the easiest way to add movement is going to be to adjusting the relative volume of the operators. So we already have the ability to modulate this with LFO1. One of the reasons, by the way, for using these normal routings here is if you use routings in the mod matrix, you're limited to 12 of them. If you use these normal routings, there is no mod slot used for that, so it's preferable here. What I'm thinking is I would like them all to move with different frequencies, so I'm going to try and use all the LFOs. I feel like they need to be quite low frequency, so let's say half a hertz. Let's go to 0.45. This one can go down to 0.4. And I'd like them all voice synced. So this means when I play a note, then it's going to resynchronize the LFO. So that's useful because I can have each of the voices playing out of phase with another. The other option is common or key sync off. Key sync off will mean that they're not synchronized at all between the voices. So I think voice is a good option to have here because we'll get some consistency, but we'll also get some variation between the voices. So what I'm going to do then is apply LFO1, LFO2, LFO3, LFO1, LFO2, LFO3, but I'm going to apply the former positively and the latter negatively, so it sounds like we have more of these things going on than we do. So we have a normal routing for LFO1, so let's set that right here. Say 20%, and then operator 4 we can run at minus 20%. And now in the mod matrix, I'm going to add the other modulations. So into the mod matrix, we're going to use 4 sources, the LFOs. One of them is going to be, let me just double check, that was LFO1. So we're going to use LFO2 and LFO3. So mod matrix, LFO2, LFO3, LFO2, LFO3. I set them up like that so as we can just put the voices in the order they appear, or rather the operators. So 2, 3, 5, and 6. And we're going to be setting them to level, level, and level. So the first one I set to 20%. So I think the higher frequency ones probably want to be, that was 20, maybe this should be lower intensity modulation. So maybe I should be thinking, if 6, let me go back up here. Imagine this one was a negative modulation of, say, 4. This would be 8. That would be 12. That would be positive 16. I'm adding 4 each time. Positive 20. And then this is going to be 24. Let's try that again. So that's minus 4, minus 8, minus 12. Then plus 16, plus 20, and then these are going to be 24. Okay, so let's go back here. Operator 1, this is going to be plus 24, so we've got 24, 20, 16, 12, so this is going to be negative 12. So I'm just trying to sort of develop some symmetry and pattern here so it's easy to comprehend. I think that's working reasonably. Now for velocity sensitivity. I think I'm going to want most velocity sensitivity at the highest frequency. So let's set that up to maybe 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, and 10. You may wonder why I tend to go for higher modulation at higher velocities, higher frequencies. That's because in acoustic sounds, typically when you strike them lightly, you mostly get energy at the fundamental, and the more energy you put in, the more higher frequencies you get. So let's press lightly. Let's press hard. So when played as a sort of staccato keyboard sound, we still get something of that expression, but also it can be played as a pad sound. So I think that's quite interesting. One thing I'm thinking about is maybe with higher velocity, I'll make the attack shorter. So let's go to the mod matrix. Now I could do this per operator, but I can simply say keyboard velocity to program attack level. So I think that's pretty interesting, and I think I might mess with the release level using the release velocity. So next one, keyboard release velocity to program release time. So I think you can hear that even though being an additive sound and having that sustain there, it has something of an organ sound to it. It doesn't exactly sound like an organ. I'm tempted to, though, decrease these sustain levels. So I set this one down at sustain 40. I'm going to take it lower down to sustain 20. And I'm going to take these down correspondingly. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So now the sustain okay, so I think that's giving us some of the motion that we want. Let's listen to those LFOs. I think the final thing I'd like to add is a bit of filter. So let's pick a filter type. So let's get the filter envelope in shape. I think what I'm going to do is just give it a long decay. Short attack. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the velocity open the filter, and in fact maybe even increase the resonance a bit. So let's go keyboard velocity to filter cutoff and keyboard velocity to filter resonance. So first the okay, let's try this out. So I think this release time modulation is a bit too strong. Just check it in the upper registers. I might get a little bit of LFO movement in the in the filter, but I might add another LFO moving it here. So let's see, LFO, that was LFO 2, so let's use LFO 3, routed to the filter cutoff. Let's go in the bass register. So I might try turning on this lo-fi mode. I believe it reduces the amount of anti-aliasing that's being done. Next, let's go in the effects section. Maybe a rotary speaker. Embrace the organ sound. Okay, sounds quite interesting. Let's go to the next one. What are we going to use? Maybe this decimator, it's like a bit crusher. And next, the reverb. Maybe this space reverb. Okay, so I think I've gone through an end-to-end process here to make something of an additive sound. Now I haven't added any modulations for the mod wheel, and I think you can see that the depth that this synthesizer provides means that it's difficult for me to design a full sound end-to-end in just 10 or 15 minutes. I'm always running on to 20, 25, 30 minutes. And I think that reflects something of the complexity that this synthesizer provides. So let's have a little play on this. Let's try maybe up an octave. Down. Even lower. Okay, so I think you can hear that, yes, that sound could be mistaken for an FM sound. It could be mistaken maybe for a more complex subtractive synth sound, but I think I've taken it a long way from the organ sound that you tend to get with these initial additive patches, And I think you can also hear that I have it set up such that we can play something like a pad, or we can play something a bit more attacky and punchy. So it gives us two possibilities in the way that we play this patch. I think that's everything I want to talk about today, so I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope that you'll join me for some more episodes in this series where I learn to get the best out of the Opsix. But in any case, most importantly, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.